The software developer career path is more divided than ever. We're experiencing complete polarity between AI is God tier and I haven't looked at code in over a year to AI is evil. And I do think that there are a lot of people that fall in the middle of this. And I think that this is because there are developers that are product developers and process developers. This is actually a concept that I picked up from knitting, of all things, where there are some people that think to themselves, no matter what project I'm working on, I like the process of creating and knitting. So I know that no matter what, I don't really care too much about what it is that I'm building, and or I'm not as motivated by the results. And it's actually the act of knitting itself that keeps me going forward. Software development, I think, has a very similar mindset where for some developers, the most validating and exciting part is actually in solving the problem. And so they enjoy typing out the solutions and thinking about it and having deep contemplation and having to think about what out of their knowledge pool can they use to apply and solve this problem. There are other people, by contrast, that are most motivated by what can I build with this? And they really want to see those outcomes. And to them, being able to just prompt an LLM to generate software for them that achieves that goal is more than enough satisfaction for them to be excited about that thing and then move on to the next project that they want to build. Building agentic workflows from scratch can be a sprawling mess. Before you even touch your actual product logic, you're stuck wiring up planners, managing MCP servers, and fighting with context windows. That's why the new GitHub Copilot SDK is such a game changer. It takes the same production-tested execution loop that powers the Copilot CLI and lets you embed it directly into your app. We're talking programmatic access to the same tried and true tool loop, authentication, and model management used by GitHub. It handles the boring infra so you can focus on what matters. Whether you're building custom internal agents or a new AI-powered GUI, you're starting 10 steps ahead with persistent memory and multi-model support baked in. Stop building the platform and start building the features. Check out the GitHub Copilot SDK to start your technical preview. Thank you to GitHub for sponsoring this segment, and now back to the video. I think that this polarity comes not necessarily from a place of one is better than the other, but more so just a mindset and honestly just a preference in software development. I do think that AI has a lot of value that it can bring to both sides of the field. Obviously, if you are a product-oriented developer, then this allows you to iterate on things very quickly, and that is what brings you the most joy in your software development process. However, if you are a process-oriented programmer, then AI can still be a very good tool that helps you kind of problem solve and that you can either bounce ideas off of, you can gain more contextual awareness of the project, of the problem, and even just when your stamina is starting to run low when you're debugging a problem, you can say, hey, look, I'm pretty sure the problem lies somewhere in this function. Can you look at this very specifically scoped problem and try and help me debug it? Also, it can be really helpful if you're looking at different algorithms and trying to figure out where there might be a bit of a logical bug and your brain's just not working well. You just can't seem to pin your finger on it. Like, it happens to all of us, and it can be really unenjoyable when you hit that point. So I think that being able to leverage AI as a way to kind of alleviate some of that pressure or that burden when you're problem solving can be really beneficial and allow you to have a longer, more sustained output instead of having to step back and come back to it later. However, I will say that with the introduction of AI, it does not take away the fact that we still are wired to learn and grow in a very specific way. There's a reason why recall-based studying is the most effective. We do thrive off of that challenge and that struggle. So I will say, even from my own experience doing, complete polar end of vibe coding where I didn't even really look at the code base and was mostly just prompting, to using AI as a tool for learning. I will say that if I'm pure vibe coding, and okay, disclaimer, this is coming from a process-oriented developer, okay? So I do potentially have my own little biases here. However, I did find that when I was doing pure vibe coding, that I didn't really learn very much, just in general about how to solve the problem, or anything about the code base really. Like I did not get any better at understanding where things were in the code base or how to navigate it by the end of the week compared to normally when I would have to like read through more of the code base and try and understand where things are. Sure, it's more time consuming up front. However, I do think that in the more long term, it helps a lot with the maintenance burden. Another thing to consider is that if you're doing a lot of like vibe coded things, then like who is accountable for that software? If things go wrong and it's AI produced it, you are still accountable for the changes that you make. So that is something to keep in mind, is just like always make sure that you are scrutinizing the code as if it was your own. Make sure that you are looking into it. I know that a lot of the more process-oriented developers do also worry about like that maintenance burden, because, you know, they worry about the ON solution, the complexity of the AI generated boilerplate and solutions by contrast to the product devs who just want to see things shipped quickly. I think that there is a balance that we need to strike in terms of like for longer term projects that will need maintenance. You cannot, I don't think, just vibe code the whole thing. But at a certain point, it works or it doesn't. And if it's a small enough tool, I think that it makes sense. And if it's something just for personal use, is very different than when it could be potentially your job on the line. I think that just in general in the programming landscape, now is a really good time to focus more on systems architecture, systems design, and being able to express problems very eloquently and working on those communication skills. Because at the end of the day, your ability to leverage this tool is how well you can understand and explain problems in a very concise way. So I guess my conclusion is that if you are learning and if you are leveraging these things to learn, that is okay. And if you are vibe coding, that is also okay. I just think that everything needs to be done responsibly, and a lot of it comes down to the priorities of whatever you're building for. If your work wants you to iterate on things very quickly, and that could put a lot of pressure on you, sometimes you just gotta do it. Sometimes you just gotta use the tools that are at your disposal to make your life easier. If you're alternatively in an environment where you are able to like learn and your goal is growth, then sitting with that challenge, despite the fact that it might take a little bit longer, is very important. I do also think that it's just a good tool to like answer questions for you quickly, very similar to like when you would look things up for using like a search engine. I think that it's good to be able to like get a certain amount of answers. I don't think that it necessarily replaces books. Like I think it can give you a very shallow understanding of a very specific thing, or it can give you like a surface level understanding of a broader concept, problem, whatever. But you will always get really good depth from books. And I know maybe I'll get some heat for that. Some people were hating on the fact that I recommended books as a resource for learning a programming language, which is crazy to me. But like reading is still very important. Reading comprehension is very important. Writing abilities is more important than ever, arguably. You need to read a lot to be able to write well. So I just think that generally, like, please let yourself continue to be challenged and work through these things. And I respect all developers, and I think that we all get our passions from different things. So hopefully this resonates with you. Let me know what you think in the comments. And maybe this helps explain why there feels like there's such a divide in the software engineering space right now. And maybe this can help us find some middle ground to not be at each other's throats so much on which way is the right way, because at the end of the day, it's contextual and everyone's entitled and allowed to work in the way that makes them happy. Unless your company is telling you otherwise. And sometimes you just gotta do what the boss says, okay? Anyway, that is the end for this video. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.